Hello, dear listeners. What you're about to listen to is an interview conducted in 1996 between Next Generation magazine and Dave Perry, the influential mind behind Shiny Entertainment. As you probably already know, Dave Perry is best known for creating Earthworm Jim and MDK, as well as developing 16-bit classics like Disney's Aladdin and Cool Spot. Sadly, Next Generation closed shop in 2002, and no audio from this interview exists online. But we at Defunct Games feel that it's vitally important to preserve these interviews. That way, future generations can learn from our past mistakes. For tonight's episode, I'll be playing the part of Next Generation magazine. Dave Perry will be played by Steve Jaworski, who is calling in all the way from Australia. The following is a real interview that was actually published in a national magazine. We apologize for the questionable sound quality and hope that it doesn't interfere in this, one of the greatest interviews in video game history. We begin our interview with a very simple question about the system that would eventually become the Nintendo 64. So, Dave Perry, what were your impressions of the Ultra 64 at the Shoshinkai show?
Initially, after sitting in a plane for 11 hours and after all the hype, I was expecting the $40,000 silicon graphics experience that had been alluded to. Of course, this was not going to be the case. However, the machine was very impressive for the money. Then again, anything would have looked good after all that airplane food.
Do you believe the system offers a quantum leap in performance over and above the PlayStation and Saturn?
From the Clive Sinclair days of British home computers, the QL, or quantum leap, was no great leap at all. However, it was nicely packaged. I feel the same way about the Ultra 64. Nintendo has done exactly what it needed to do to make itself a gap. The definition of the word quantum is actually the minimum amount by which certain properties of a system can change. So enough said, I agree with you.
As a game developer, where do you see the Ultra 64's strengths and weaknesses?
The cartridge is the weakness. It removes the ability to slam in copious amounts of animation, sounds, and spectacular effects. Its strength is a highly detailed, high-res display and the funky joypad.
If you were to develop an Ultra 64 game, how would you go about making use of the analog, digital joystick?
If I was on a hover bike, I could lean accurately into the corners. The only thing that Nintendo forgot was to make the buttons analog as well. Imagine punching with different strengths or jumping to the height you want. I guess we'll get that on the Ultra 128.
And does the prospect of a Nintendo online gaming network excite you?
Yep, it's time. It can also turn a game that would get boring quickly into a game with thousands of hours of gameplay. Finally, it supplies real learning intelligence to play against, which is still vacant in any game I've played. On the downside, expect to lose a lot of games to hermits that live on the network.
Would you agree that having started out with some very impressive games, PlayStation's development presently seems to have stagnated?
Sony's doing its best to, keep them coming, quote unquote. Look, all that you're experiencing is the infamous too many games syndrome. Hopefully, Sony will begin to filter out the rubbish. Then you'll feel more positive in general towards the software. I feel there are a lot of very talented people working on it, and Sony's being very well supported.
What evidence have you seen that Sony will be willing to filter out the bad titles?
I like Sony. It's done a great job selling PlayStation, and it's getting way too popular as far as developers goes. I don't personally buy PlayStation games anymore, as I bought a bunch of turkeys that, over time, they wear down a buyer's interest. It did with me.
Sony is claiming that with its second-generation software engines, PlayStation is capable of running the original Ridge Racer at 60 frames per second. That's an improvement of over 100%. Do you think that claim is true?
Totally. However, I don't want Ridge Racer at 60 frames per second. I want Ridge Racer at a screen res of 640 pixels across by 80 pixels deep. If Sony can do that, then it is smoking.
And why do you feel that resolution is more important than frame rate? Is this true for all game genres?
Yeah, on a road, it enables you to see farther into the distance. This enables you to negotiate obstacles better and so enjoy playing more. Big pixels means blocky vision, and I don't like my vision blocked. It also adds detail, so you can make out facial expressions on characters, for example, and I think that's important. It also enables some cool programming tricks and effects.
How do you think the second generation PlayStation software compares to Ultra 64 games?
Nintendo's already got the filter on what I mentioned a few questions ago. That means it will come out fighting and will keep leaving the player feeling positive toward the quality of the experience. Sony, hopefully, will take the same approach, then it's gloves off.
So, why do you think the PlayStation did so much better than Saturn in 1995?
The initial games on Saturn were disappointing. Ridge Racer was impressive. Magazines, schoolyard chatter, and the internet quickly spread the news.
I see. Do you think that the 32-bit games you've seen at this point are better than 16-bit games, other than the graphical aspects?
Yes and no. We have plans to bridge the gap. We think we have identified room for maneuver there.
Oh. Well, are you excited about the potential for networked multiplayer games? If so, what are the problems associated with its development? And in what form do you think mass-market multiplayer networked gaming will eventually appear?
I can't wait. Neither can the people who want to sell you ways and methods to do it. That's the problem. It'll take time, I think, before winners, formats, and protocols emerge. Then it'll be great. But then, that's also what they said about VR.
And finally, if a friend asked you what game system he should buy now, what would you recommend?
Wait for Ultra 64 if you don't mind forking out $70 a game. If you like arcade games, go with Saturn. If you're tight on cash, wait a week and pick up a few Jaguars for $50. Ouch.
We would like to thank Dave Perry for taking the time to meet with Next Generation Magazine, and Next Generation Magazine for publishing this in the first place. I would also like to thank Steve Jaworski and the vacuum that was running during our reenactment. After this interview, Dave Perry developed MDK, Wild 9, Messiah, Sacrifice, Enter the Matrix Path of Neo, The Darkness, and most recently, Age of Conan. He later went on to author a book, Dave Perry on Game Design, which was released in 2009. Despite recommending the Nintendo 64, Dave Perry never did make a game for the system. Thank you again for listening, and join us next week for another reenactment. For more information, articles, and reviews, please check out defunctgames.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our Twitter feed @defunctgames.